You are now watching Maine Wire TV with your host, Tom Shattuck, featuring Maine Wire Editor-in-Chief Steve Robinson and the indispensable John Featherston.
Also, Grant Pollard is with us, and Matt is behind the scenes running the show here. Let's just jump right in. Maine Wire, the splash right now. Frozen bananas, missed meds, locked out families. Tips pour in on Maine autism. Group homes and Mills DHHS won't call back. This is, I won't even say the culmination because we haven't culminated yet. I guess this is one of the first tremors that we're really exposing here, which includes this incredible video of this home on Stevens Street, which is just a horrible. It's depressing. It's dark. And what it does is shows somebody who's supposed to be receiving care out walking around in his underwear. I know that this scandal is much, much, much bigger than just this incident here. This is a small piece of a much larger story that we're telling. But Steve, I find that piece of video damning. It seems to me it should be sitting somewhere in evidence.
Yeah, well, I mean, this tracks with what we've been hearing about these group homes for a year now, is that the lack of supervision leads to all kinds of forms of neglect. Sometimes that's evident in the patients, and sometimes that shows up in the security camera footage of their neighbors. Law enforcement have told us about people who are supposed to be in these homes under 24-hour supervision by taxpayer-funded caregivers. They're found wandering the streets of a city or town. They're, wandering around, in this instance, a neighborhood. So this is just another instance of neglect. It's the kind of thing that happens when your employees don't speak English, are working 80 to 120 hours a week, and they're told that they can sleep on the couch and couch surf from house to house as they collect money from taxpayers. The question would be, we don't have the records for this, but did they bill for that particular time period? Because very obviously care is not being provided there. So did they bill for a full 24-hour, fully staffed house? I'm betting that the answer is yes, because the cost trajectory on all of these homes is almost exponential. All of them have higher year-over-year billing than the previous year. So they're all maxing out their billing, and regardless of the circumstances on the ground. So you're looking at neglect here, but also very likely fraud.
Matt, if you can find that, just roll it whenever you have it. The video there, John. It also seems to me that this would explain why you wouldn't have the curtains open in one of these houses. If you're not looking to the point where the guy's outside bothering the neighbors, here's a video. That is horrific. Once again, this is not his own house. He has gotten out. I don't know how far away the house is. Maybe it's next door. It doesn't matter. This guy who's severely disabled was allowed to breach the confines of this house where he's supposed to be protected because he can't protect himself. He is a helpless person. Tells you that somebody doesn't give an F inside of that house. And like I was just saying, John, now you know why the curtains are drawn in these places, because they're simply not watching them.
Tom, it's been amazing since our first video dropped last week, how many tips that I get. I get them every day. I know Steve's been getting them. I know Graham's been getting them. A constant flow. And, I've been calling it back as many people as possible. And if I haven't gotten back to you, I am getting back to everybody that has reached out. But each story, Tom, is worse than the next one. I mean, it's a rampant problem. And what we're hearing from neighbors, we're hearing from caregivers, we're hearing from family members. It's bad. And, Maine's a pretty big state, but the amount of tips that we've gotten just based off of this, and they're all credible. They're all credible tips because people, are sharing these experiences and these horrifying. And in this article that just dropped right before we came on Maine Wire TV, there's a brother, saying that, hey, I can't even go see my own brother in his own house on his birthday. His words, because the Somali caretakers won't let him in, which is in direct violation of the law of, disabled, special needs people have just the rights as Tom, Graham, Steve, and John have. They're entitled to see guests. They're entitled to have family members come over. And who are these people to say you can't even go see your own brother on his birthday? And if you
John,
do, you have to stand out in the yard? Like, what is going on here?
They're acting like prison wardens, for God's sake. And Graham, one other reporter who's been out there today says that he visited a bunch of houses today, and every single one had the blinds closed. Every single one, every single window at every single home. He says this has got to be scripted and standard operating procedure.
Yeah, and just on a human level, that's kind of depressing, right? To be at home in the middle of the day when there's no sunlight coming into the house, like that can really impact your mental health for sure. And I mean, we saw that also at the Chinese marijuana grows for a different reason, but the conditions those workers were living in wasn't fantastic either. It's, I'm already seeing some people on the left trying to discredit this, saying this is part of some national narrative to use this fake umbrella of fraud as a cudgel. And I'm just begging those people to continue saying that narrative and to continue pumping that out, because I have been doing this for a couple of years and we've had a lot of viral stories. I've never seen anything even close to like the reaction and feedback that we've got to this story. It is truly unbelievable. And I mean, the tips we're getting in are, as John was saying, just incredible to read. And like, we get a lot of tips and you can usually, a lot of them are maybe not credible, or maybe just, hey, check this out with not much details. These tips are like paragraph length, like multi-paragraph length emails with like extremely specific and explicit details. And like, I was reading through tips for like 4 hours yesterday just to try to like pick out the relevant ones and pass it on to John and the other reporters. I've never seen anything like it. And it's going to take a lot of work to try to track some of these down. We're going to do the best that we can. I feel terrible if we can't get to everyone, but it's just like the sheer overwhelming volume of tips is something just like outside of the realm of what I ever expected.
Yeah, and intended to clean up a couple of audio messages, voicemails that we had, but we're just simply too busy today on the back end. We are hustling and running around. Stevie, we talked about with the Chinese marijuana grows that there's a level of human trafficking. Can we say slavery? Is that too or indentured servitude?
Yeah, I mean, I've called them cannabis slaves. It's certainly indentured servitude. If you look at the indictment in the District of Massachusetts, they were smuggling them here from China through Mexico, flying them into Boston Logan Airport, taking their passports and forcing them to work at a marijuana house in Maine or Massachusetts, or they wouldn't get their passport back. I mean, that's indentured servitude. That's indentured slavery. The challenge comes with human trafficking as a criminal charge at the federal level. You really need the victims to say that they were trafficked and to testify against their traffickers. But it turns out that the peasant slaves of Chinese communism are very reluctant to testify against the people who enslaved them. So they're very hard cases to bring. They're very hard cases to bring. And I would say that, Graham kind of hit on it a little bit, but the parallels between this reporting and the Chinese organized crime reporting are on a number of levels. It involves properties distributed throughout the state of Maine. Neighbors have seen it, but not really understood the full scope of it. So when you start to tell the story, they immediately say, yeah, aha, so that's what's going on. And people are intuitively grasping what's happening here. They understand it on a human level, and it has national implications because it's a multi-state organized crime model.
And with the weed here, and I'm drawing a parallel because with the marijuana, you've got the commodity, the marijuana, and then you've got the product, which is the Chinese kept national who's doing the work. In this case, with people like this guy we just saw, this patient, he's both the commodity in a sense because they're making money daily and hourly off of him being in this house, and he's also a kept product in the house. This is two cottage industries in one. Not even cottage industries, two booming industries in one.
And that's exactly right. The patients in this situation are the keys to unlocking Medicaid money. The Medicaid money is the real target, and they're rotating caretakers from house to house to house so that they can keep up this pretense that they're providing care, but all they're really doing is harvesting Medicaid money from American taxpayers. A side benefit of the racket that they're running is that they also have all of these buildings, all of these houses where they can keep their illegal alien asylum applicants sheltered effectively. It's like a rotating shelter / taxpayer funded criminal family.
Hey, John, let me ask you something. We got our hands on some pictures from the Lewiston house from last week with the long form video. And it shows almost a caravan of automobiles, some not bad automobiles in front. Do you suspect at all that these houses are, obviously we know they're used for this fraud. Would you be surprised if they're used for other illegal activities?
I would not be. Unfortunately, I would not be surprised. I mean, if nothing else, they're rooming houses. People are couch surfing in these places at the very least, and that's probably the nicest thing that I can say about them. But, as we've been saying, we get tremendous amount of tips. People have been saying to us that, cars have been outside there. Nice cars have been outside there. If you're a healthcare worker working in, in an autism support house, you're probably not driving a Volvo or a BMW or, a Mercedes or something like that. But oftentimes, not 100%, I'll see these cars when I go to these houses. And I've been to a tremendous amount of houses in the last, 10 days. The gentleman in Lewiston that was, driving a Cadillac, that's a $70,000, $80,000 car. I mean, so every time you go to one of these places, you see nice cars, and nice cars don't necessarily mean guilt. But when you see it on a consistent pattern, you have to say to yourself, what is really going on here? Like, really going on here? Because you're not making that type of money. Not everybody can, afford that type of, payment on something. So it does make your mind go to there. And then when you're met with so much secrecy, it just, common sense just says to you, like, even more. I reckon back to the video of Steve talking to that lady on the street going, is this the level of care that we were supposed? I don't understand the question. Well, it was about the simplest question in the history of the world. Like, is this the type of care that you can,
yes,
give? And they can't even answer that simple question. So what else are they hiding?
Well, I just to put a point on that, John, the profligate displays of wealth are one of the clearest indicators in any fraud investigation. Like if you're looking at insurance fraud, workers' comp fraud, whatever, tax fraud, whatever it is, the first thing that criminal investigators will start looking for are profligate displays of wealth. And that's what we see here, whether it's the real estate records tied to the directors of these companies or their vehicle records. Most Mainers aren't living in $800,000 houses and driving G-Wagons. So it does make you perk up when an asylum seeker who arrived here in 2019 all of a sudden creates a Medicaid agency out of thin air and starts billing $18 million a year, owns 5 properties, an $800,000 home, and is driving around in a G-Wagon, which he can use when he's not driving around in his Dodge Charger. That's a kind of lifestyle that most Mainers can't afford, but they're paying for it out of their taxes.
Do we suspect that the G-Wagons are being supplemented somehow, or do we think it's standard operating procedure for these guys to hide their income in assets?
Well, yeah, I do think that the G-Wagons they're probably using some kind of a tax deduction, but I mean we see nice cars that couldn't conceivably be part of that tax exemption. But also with one of our guys, we know that he's not really paying his taxes because last September he had a $250,000 lien filed against him for unpaid federal taxes. So who knows what the G-Wagons are? Maybe these guys are just Mercedes people. I have heard from a source. I have heard from a source that they witnessed one of these directors, browsing the Mercedes online catalog. So it might just be their picture of luxury.
They're incredibly popular cars in Africa, actually. Mercedes are, because they're surprisingly reliable on that terrain. But just to quickly go back a second, there was the photo you guys were talking about at the house that Mike was at for the long form video. Tons of nice cars there today. There was also we were alerted to tremendous amount of activity at the Stevens Street house that you visited on last week, John. Only speculation why, but there was about 5 or 6 cars in the driveway of that place on a Friday night. So why would that be? I mean, maybe, just speculating, but maybe they were cleaning it up in case a family member went to check out the property after seeing the video. Just a possibility. So yeah, it's certainly intriguing. Like, why else would they have 7 people there? When you're talking about other illegal activity, we have heard many tips of people smoking weed in the garage or in the downstairs areas of these houses, and then that being reported to DHHS and nothing happening. And that seems to be a huge part of the story too. And it's in the article we just posted is John has been trying to contact DHHS like nonstop, and he just hasn't been able to get a statement. Like, these are the people, if you work for DHHS, your job is to care for people in Maine like this. And there seems to be just absolutely no interest in following up on any of this.
But Graham, I wanted to follow up is that, when I look back at the video of the man videotaping me and I'm giving him my business card and he doesn't tell me who he is. And now that I found out he's actually the CEO of Lighthouse. I want to be perfectly clear. He's the CEO of Lighthouse. And the way that he was trying to bully me. And then I was talking to a source today that we quote in the article that we just posted, the brother. These caregivers are bullying him, going, well, I don't care if you're his brother. You can't come in. You can't see him. You have to, if you want to talk to him, he has to come out in the yard to you. And where does this arrogance come from? Because if you're a care provider, you care about the whole thing. You care about the emotional package. This source that I was talking to, the mother of the family had just recently died, and it caused a lot of stress, and they had to put the brother in a home. So just imagine the stress and the trauma there. And then when you go to visit your brother, you're met at the door by some guy who is playing video games and smoking pot. Because these are both things that I've been told as well. And no, sorry, you can't come see your brother. Leave. And I look at the video, the guy telling me, leave. Well, no, I'm not going to leave. I'm an invited guest of this. So they're not trained how to check your diabetes. They're not trained to check your blood sugar. They're not trained to, administer your meds, but they are trained on bullying, it seems like. And that should be a red flag to everybody.
Well, and also you look at all the cars in front of the house and you wonder why they're there. Maybe he went missing again. Maybe they want to recover him. They need to produce a human being at some point, I think, in order to get paid. Occasionally they do.
But where is the Mills administration? How many radio interviews have I done, Steve, in the last week? Well, since the story dropped. I mean, Ray Richardson was going off this morning when I was on his program, calling out the governor too. Like, okay, if you're not going to call John Featherston or Steve Robinson back from the Maine Wire, call Ray Richardson. Ray Richardson will get you in touch with the right people and stuff. Nope. And you can't tell me that the Mills administration is not aware of this at this point. So if the phone don't ring and it's them, what does that tell you?
Well, I'll tell you that they also have to have been aware about this because of the Freedom of Access Act requests that we've submitted, the questions that we've emailed. We gave them plenty of lead time. They weren't ambushed with this by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a situation where they think that they can ignore the Maine Wire because it's the Maine Wire, but it's not going to work out for them. The media landscape in the state has changed. People can access the information. They can see the video for themselves. They'll be able to see the spending records for themselves. The data that the Maine HHS, the national HHS released on Friday is even more damning. If it could possibly be the case, it's even more damning when you analyze the cost per claim and the cost of these residential care facilities in Maine versus the national average. You can see that clearly something is out of whack. Clearly, the program is being exploited, and it's just another indicator that there's wide-scale Medicaid fraud happening.
Graham, John asked how somebody could be so inhumane. And I think that it's once you start, and I think you can almost you can persuade yourself to rationalize it away. It's tough doing the home healthcare business. I'm sure it can be very annoying. And once you start dehumanizing somebody in your mind, then you can do it a little bit more the next day. And then the next day you don't feed him, and then it's like, oh, we fed him like 1 out of every 3 days, and then the next day he's dirty, but he's not as dirty as he was before. There's 1,000 ways to rationalize. And then pretty soon he's walking around the neighborhood.
Well, this didn't start a week ago or a month ago. This has been going on for quite some time with essentially no scrutiny. The only difference is it's now been reported on and is coming to light in the last week or month. But these people have been operating this way unimpeded for the last couple of years, if not longer. Yeah. So you can see how a pattern of behavior could build up over that time of entitlement and thinking that they own the place because they effectively have owned the place for the last 2 years, and that's just how their pattern of behavior is developed. So, yeah, I mean that's a creepy photo. But you're exactly right, Tom. I mean, it's just very, very clear from the hundreds and hundreds of messages that care is not being provided, and that's the bottom line of this story: is you have the most vulnerable people in our society that are getting exploited and getting taken advantage of here.
Yeah, and it seems like there are people who are coming right into it, willing to do this, willing to be this cruel. But it's not everybody, John. We can't go public with it yet, but you got some video, some audio of a person who works adjacent to some of these people. About 5 minutes of it, and she was lovely. And
totally, yeah.
Beautiful. So it's not everybody is polluted. Not everybody has been turned, has gone sideways here.
Well, I think that's some of the challenge, though, Tom, is that if you're an office manager and you're seeing, the billings coming in, and you've got all these residential homes, and you're probably a little bit proud of yourself because you think you're making a difference in the world, because you probably don't know what's really going on, because the government doesn't know what's going on. Local, code enforcement doesn't seem to know what's going on. The police are aware, but they're not 100%, buttoned up on it. So if you're a young, and I don't want to say naive, I don't want to say this person is naive, but person just working in the office, you're thinking you're changing the world, and that's not what's happening, really. I mean, I want to be perfectly clear. Steve and I went to a legitimate autism care place last week, and it was so refreshing to actually go and have a conversation and realize that things are really being taken care of. So it's not 100% of places that we go, but the ones that we go to, I don't even know what the right terminology is. It's abuse. It's scary. And do loved ones really know what's going on? Because they could be told everything is fine, or that, hey, look at this, radical group, the Maine Wire, is trying to break down a door. Nobody was trying to break down a door. We were knocking on a door, asking questions, following up on a tip like any good journalist would do. And for other people to characterize it as anything else is just outrageously stupid. But if you're a loved one, are you being told the truth? And everybody gets busy. Everybody has lives to live. And I say this by years of experience of being a board of health director and checking up on rest homes and stuff like that. People don't get a lot of visitors. They don't get a lot of things. But then when they do go and see them, they're often horrified by the conditions. And let's just talk about the bed bugs that we found in Portland. If the phone doesn't ring from Portland, it's Portland Court Enforcement not calling back that you've had bed bugs in a unit for 7 or 8 years. People are saying, so people just don't know what's going on. But if government's not going to protect the most vulnerable people, then why do we need government? Government's job is to protect the vulnerable people, and they're not.
We know that Portland, some people in the Portland city were aware of this bed bug issue. It's a very bizarre issue because this is a big facility, and you got a ton of tips from it. And then you went there, and you were there 5 minutes before people started talking about the bed bugs. And then the lady at the desk
it was like a line of people just wanted to do story after story.
they just wanted someone to get the story out because they had been reporting it and nothing had been happening. And we heard of trying to figure out the best way to say this while keeping the source anonymous. City workers on the health on the services side that would have to burn the clothes they were wearing after going in because they knew it could be infested with bed bugs. So that's an issue that obviously the city knows about. And yeah, that's another one. That story has been published and no one is getting back to you on that one. The facility's not getting back to you. So why don't they want to talk?
It's in the Maine Wire. It was posted yesterday. The headline is, "We've been living with this. Seniors allege ongoing bed bug infestation at Portland facility," as you just heard Graham say. Having to burn the sheets. That's great. That's just freaking great.
Look at those bug bites on this person's leg. I mean, just look at that.
Yeah, and if you Google bed bug bites, it looks exactly like that photo.
In the chat, along with a bunch more leads, which we'll take. Thank you. This is a good one for Steve. How come our Maine mainstream media hasn't seen this in the Maine Wire story? And he says, sorry, it's sarcasm, but no, seriously, Steve, if you're a TV station locally, why don't you go to themainewire.com, scrape the audio of the video with credit, and it's a hugely compelling video, and lead with this.
I don't know. It's probably they want to ignore it because we're dicks to them, and if they're smart, they probably see the writing on the wall that the new media technologies have obviated the need for terrestrial TV. They'll hang on to an audience, that's judging by the actuarial tables dying rapidly. So they're all looking at the exits, trying to find a bigger TV market to cling to for a little while, but they know that they don't want to breathe any life into a competition's a competitor's story. They gave precious little coverage to the Chinese marijuana stuff. I mean, Greg Lagerquist at WGME had me on, I think, once, but then other than that, they haven't really done anything with the story, which is really made for video. I also think that this is a little bit more. There's more work required to do your due diligence, and there's some risk involved. And I think anytime you're covering someone who is in a position where they're disabled, there are issues around informed consent, healthcare, HIPAA, that kind of thing. So there's so much murkiness to it that I could see the other outlets just saying, "Nah, that's too much work. We don't want to dive into it. Show us a car accident or another Janet Mills rally, or get Graham Plattner on to talk about his tattoo." That's an easy story. So that's why I think you haven't seen him cover it. There's a little bit of bias and ego mixed in there, but it's also it's a really, really difficult story to wrap your head around. It's a really difficult story to fully investigate. But the bottom line is that we have hundreds, if not thousands, of residential care facilities peppered around the state that are not registered with the state because they suspended the requirement to register these houses. For example, there's some of these houses in Levant, Maine, but if you search the records that the state makes public, there's no record of residential care facilities in Levant. So it's a big story. It affects the entire state. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of these houses, and the people who are operating them are making hundreds of millions of dollars at the expense of taxpayers.
I was a friend of mine is an old school legacy newspaper guy, an old school ink stained wretch who just recently, last few years, got a job at a television station, a New England television station, and he's depressed because he wants to do hard news. He wants those reporters out doing hard news, and he calls winter deer stuck on ice season because that's what they go with. It's stories about the deer stuck on ice, and then come summer, it's fire season. Speaking of Graham Plattner's tattoo, we found out that the Pawtucket, Rhode Island alleged shooter shares the same tattoo and was I don't even know if it wasn't. I assume he's been let go, but was employed at the Bath Iron Works. At General Dynamics Bath Iron Works, we found out this guy has killed at least 2 people and himself. He goes as a woman. He's a trans person who calls himself Roberta Esposito, among other things, known to be a lunatic from people around him. And one is the logistics of being in Bath, Maine, down to Rhode Island seems interesting. But this is undeniably, Graham, pointing us to the fact that when it comes to the trans community and violence, we've got a problemo here.
Oh yeah, undeniable. Just look at what just happened in Canada. Look what happened in Nashville. There's people that can have compiled all the list, and it's a real mental health issue clearly, and it leads you to think that maybe Maine shouldn't have gone all in on becoming a transgender surgery sanctuary state. Maybe Maine shouldn't have gone all in on making Maine a transgender trafficking state. Maybe Janet Mills should have put her familiar connections aside with her sister Dora and had the common sense to not go all in on these surgeries, not go all in on men competing in women's sports. The data and the fact pattern speaks for itself. There's nothing really you need to say other than just to look at the incidents that have happened with the transgender violence over the last 2 or 3 years. And then, of course, the tattoo, very interesting that this individual happened to have the same tattoo as Graham Plattner does. So do with that what you will, but a heartbreaking story and a real tragedy out of Rhode Island for sure.
Steve, actually, a Maine TV station actually wrote up this story and included the fact that he was trans and that the previous shooter in Canada was also trans, which I assume that reporter has been fired. Why is this the most sacred, protected class of people in blue states mostly?
I think it's because they served as a useful political weapon, to be honest. And that's the only reason why the bills that Graham was just talking about, the trans trafficking bill, taxpayer funding for these procedures, that's the only reason why those bills came into being, was because they knew that there's a certain point where conservatives are going to hold the line and cling to reality and refuse to go along with this insanity, and they wanted to reignite the success that they had with the gay marriage referendum. I think you've seen this play out nationally and at each state level, but particularly here in Maine, you had all these nonprofits and all these groups that were spun up specifically to bring about same-sex marriage legalization, and they did that effectively. So you have all this energy and all these groups. You've got Equality Maine raising a couple $1 million a year from big-name corporate sponsors like Hanover Brothers. You've got this big infrastructure created, and now they don't know where to go. Where do they go? What are they going to do with all that energy? They're just going to stop being, political zealots? No, they find the new issue. They find the trans issue, and they tuck it into, no pun intended, they tuck it into the the LGBTQ acronym, and they have a useful political energizing force there. But I think it's unraveling. It's unraveling under the gravity of reality, because there are increasingly gay and lesbian adults who say, no, this is not, we don't want to be in one tent. This is different. You shouldn't be doing this to kids. We're not going along with this because it's leading to the victimization of children, whether it's with gender changing drugs, surgeries, whatever. They're victimizing kids, even kids who don't fall into the gender dysmorphia social contagion, are being victimized with it because it's taken over the friggin' schools. Every minute that they spend teaching about, pangenderism and whatever the stripes on whatever flags they have up, every second they spend on that is a second that they're not spending on reading and math, and it's showing. But I think you've just seen, there were two major medical associations, I forget exactly which ones, that have recently reversed their opinions on the scientific merits that previously they pointed to when they were studying, asserting the medical benefits of this kind of thing. The scientific evidence has always been very, very weak, but now it's starting to catch up. So I think you're going to continue to see an unraveling of the support base for this as their argument continues to deteriorate, and more and more people start to become concerned with the litigation. The doctors who performed these surgeries, the doctors who prescribed these medications, they have to start being very worried about litigation from people like Chloe Cole, who came to Maine last year to testify to talk in favor of the Maine Girl Dads referendum. she's got a pretty big lawsuit in the works, and I think she has a very legitimate basis to claim malpractice. And all of these, plastic surgeons cutting the breasts off healthy young girls, or Planned Parenthood clinics providing, prostate cancer drugs to young boys. I think they've all got to worry about the malpractice litigation risk here.
John, it was interesting when I was just thinking back on, and I know that we've done some work with Matt Walsh, but looking back on his What is a Woman documentary, when he talked to the gender studies professor, and he asked the gender studies professor, he said, "What is a woman?" And then the gender studies professor paused for a beat and said, "Why do you want to know?" Doesn't that give up the game? Like right there, that this is a pretty
question. Yeah.
Yeah. It's at best a fantasy land, at worst, just another grift that these people have been involved with. And man, they've destroyed a lot of young people along the way.
We have somebody on the Supreme Court of the United States who doesn't know what a woman is. I mean, it shows you the scary times that we're living in. And she's a woman.
Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, like immediately, but the Epstein stuff and the amount of talk about transgenderism and transhumanism that you saw in those emails that he's talking about, 10 years ago is really, really creepy. It adds a super creepy element to what they're doing, because there is this like weird, almost religious component to the transgenderism, which is, has its roots in really old political philosophy that men can just like recreate themselves in a better, more perfect image according to their own intelligence and reason. Like that's ultimately what's at play here, is a total denial of human nature, a denial of scientific reality, and this unlimited belief that people can make themselves better through science or medical technology or whatever it is. But again, reality rears its ugly head.
Yeah, and Graham, I think it's funny because I think part of that is that if you're on the crazy left, it's like, okay, you believe my delusion, I'll play along with your delusion. That'll be the little pack we have going together. So you saw with the Munich defense conference, you saw a panel on gender. Hillary Clinton was involved, and the male congressman was the featured speaker, who's pretending to be a female. I forgot his name, whatever, from Delaware. And he's like, I'm so happy because, LGBT rights have been. So we're doing a gender forum. You've seated a seat that should belong to a woman to a man, and all the other progressives are playing along like it's absolutely normal.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's absolutely the cruel irony of that situation is like it's what you see in Maine with the women's sports. It's the same exact thing. It's like we're sacrificing the rights of women. Like that guy, Sarah McBride, I believe is who you're talking about, took the spot of any other woman who would have been a crazy left-wing woman. But whatever, it's still, the point remains the same. Took the spot of someone who could be really talking about female empowerment up there on the stage. I don't. The whole thing with that in Munich, that's just a weird sideshow. Like, why are American politicians even going there to talk about gender anyway? Like, is that not a waste of money for the whole thing?
You know what it wasn't? It wasn't a good showcase for actual American women. Mm-hmm. Not for AOC, not for Gretchen Whitmer, not for...
The Venezuela line was not great. Venezuela being above the equator, she said, not good.
As you're saying it, you think to yourself, it could be 50-50 here. Let's just hope this turns out right. Yeah, that was just vicious. I know that we were not going to spend much time talking about it, but that was just vicious. I do have a theory for you guys. And tell me if this is crazy. I just thought of this. I'm seeing more and more people, and of course it's the celebrity class and it's other progressive thinkers, and you see this written up, and even on social media, saying, okay, now Trump voters, now I think you see what you did wrong. You see that this isn't what you voted for. And if you want to slide into my DMs and like just explain to me whatever, we can have a conversation. You're going to have a chance, that we should be gentle to some of these Republicans that fell for the Fuhrer. And so like we should have a nice confessional for them, give them a chance to do penance. And it's really a condescending thing that they're saying, because it's a newest iteration of them being so effing mad that they're they're now so twisted that they've moved on to this phase of now depicting themselves as somebody who's going to give you salvation. Here's my theory, and you tell me if there's something to this. You know that they do projection for a living. The left always does projection. They accuse you of being a weird racist when really they're weird racists, and they accuse you of doing this, and it's always them. Could it be that this is their way? This is their way. Steve, I'll make this quick. I have a hypothetical for you.
No, I was listening to it. I was listening.
Could it be that this is their way for preparing for dealing with the fact that they were so horrifically wrong on the trans issue and butchered so many kids, and knowing that they're going to have to reckon?
I think you're giving them a level of humility and self-awareness that they don't have. I don't think it's that thoughtful. I think it's part of. I still think it's part of the same impulse that leads, Steve Collins to write a column for the Press Herald telling Republicans how they ought to be behaving. Right? It's the same condescending. I know better than you do what's in your best interest and what kind of political views you should hold. I think it comes from that place, not from a we want reconciliation in the future on our issues, so maybe we'll try to reconcile with Democrats. I mean, with Republicans. And to be honest, I haven't seen a ton of that happening at the local level here in Maine. Maine's kind of at a weird spot in relation to the national dynamic because. Democrats, the far left, still has ironclad hold over every political institution, all of the educational institutions. So yes, there's flashes in the pan where there's this confrontation with ICE that lasted all of a minute, and nobody in the state can point us toward somebody who was deported who ought not have been deported. It seems like all of them were criminals. There's no ill consequences whatsoever of Operation Catch of the Day. Seems like we got some scammers and some violent people and some drug dealers out of the country, but by and large, the progressive claim to control all of our institutions and of political dominance, it's still perfectly held here. So I don't know that they have any incentive to look for reconciliation. Whereas if you're like a Democrat in a purple state or a red state, you might want to go out and find that reconciliation because you still have to live and work in a community that's not totally under your control or under the control of your political allies.
So Graham, I am regretful that I handed that flaccid excuse for a theory to the boss, for the boss to have to spend 2 minutes on there. I felt like when AOC was asked about Taiwan and China, the room got thick as I was working through my theory. But let me ask you something, Graham. Let me ask you something. Is being a progressive just never having to ever say a sorry? They don't have to. They didn't say sorry for COVID. They didn't say sorry for ruining. They just don't.
Yeah, how many times does your news sources have to be wrong and lie to you before you wake up and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe the last 5 years when everything they've said has turned out to be wrong, maybe I got to move on and start looking at other things. There was these people in Brunswick or Bath or one of these places decided they're going to spend their Valentine's Day out protesting Trump, what they've been doing every single week for the last year and a half. And there was literally a guy with a sign that had the Bad Bunny, love Trump's hate, whatever that was. And right next to him, there was a guy with a sign that said to kill Trump. So, I mean, that kind of sums up the Democrat Party protesters perfectly, I think. Yeah, the lack of apologizing. Yeah, there you go. So there's that one, and then there's another one with the guy with the Bad Bunny sign. But yeah, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. That's just what they tell themselves to think that they have the moral high ground and the moral superiority. It's just utter nonsense, obviously.
That guy in the orange coat gets around. I've seen him in other places too, across the state. I mean, he's pretty, easy to recognize. So, I mean, he gets around. So,
hey, John, you've been in politics. Have you seen people come back around to you and say, you know what, I'm thinking about that. I was just kind of a dick there, 6 years ago.
The only person who ever officially ever apologized about being wrong about something, and you'll be surprised by this, Tom, is Deval Patrick, the former governor of Massachusetts. He once admitted that he made a mistake on something, but Ed Markey's never done it to me. Elizabeth Warren's never done it to me. Karen Spilka, Maura Healey, they've never done it. No, No. Catherine Clark.
I think rewriting history is probably the more common route that people will go, right? You know, they'll be deleting tweets and Facebook posts about the trans issue, and then just move on from it, and deny that it ever happened, and pretend like they were always on the right side of the story. I think that's the trajectory it'll go in. A good model is COVID, right? Where everybody's political views changed during COVID, or how you were processing the information. But there were some people who were like extreme pro lockdown, pro masking, like hold down the Trump voters and shoot them full of the Fauci juice because they're vax deniers, blah blah blah. They wanted the worst possible treatment for people who were hesitant about the vaccine. And then over a couple of years, like the facts come out, and it turns out that people, conservatives and skeptics were right about everything. And now you have a lot of people who are like, I'm not getting those boosters that, maybe 2-3 years ago were trying to hold people down and shoot them full of them. So I think that's probably a good model for what you're going to see with the transgender stuff, is people kind of changing their opinions. One area where you won't be able to see that, though, and there's actually, I think there's a British writer who had a viral video last year about this, where she said that there's a constituency here baked in that will never be able to admit that they're wrong, and that's parents who transed their kids. They're never going to be able to be like, you know what, I was wrong about this, because they permanently harmed their kids. So they're always going to have to be committed to upholding the transgender ideology. So that changes the dynamic just a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a psychological coping challenge that I think would be hard for most human beings to reckon with, that they've done this. By the way, I know this isn't show and tell, but I just want to show you guys here. See, it says,
wow,
it's a hashtag.
Congratulations.
There. Thank you. It says,
wow,
hashtag trust the facts. Hashtag get the vax. And once again, trust the facts. The facts were that once you had the vaccine, remember, you couldn't spread or get the disease, COVID whatsoever, which is actually what happened to me, except for all the times I got COVID after I got the vaccine. And which was, I've never felt worse, as a matter of fact, in the last 10 years as I did once when I got that shot. Man, these people, man, another thing goes to show, John, is that like the expert credentialed class, people complain that, oh my goodness, we don't believe in institutions anymore. Well, F you, dude. It's like all these austere, institutions, they lied to us. They lied. Washington, D.C., full of these, all of them lie.
I guess that's my biggest frustration right now is like, okay, I want the optic of Fauci in handcuffs, but okay, maybe we don't put him in handcuffs, but can we indict him? Or can we indict some of the pharmacists?
I want that. I want that optic.
Can we indict Tim Walz and Janet Mills? Like, we need accountability in this country. Like, we were lied to about COVID. We've been lied to about fraud in Maine. Where is the accountability?
Voting in Maine. Lied to about voting in Maine.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that as I told Sean Ryan, the scope of the Medicaid fraud, like the scope of the COVID fraud, it's so big that if you try to get accountability through the mechanisms we have for that already, like a criminal justice procedure. Now, just think about based off our investigation into Medicaid in Maine. Think if you had to take every single case of a Medicaid firm that's effectively stealing and run it through the defense attorney, the judge, the investigators, and do that whole process. You're looking at like 2-3 years worth of process, more taxpayer money. And with some of these things, will you ever be able to rise to the level where you could convince a jury that fraud was happening here? Will you meet the technical definition of the statute for fraud? Can you ever really prove that those translation services didn't occur? Can you prove that this improper payment was in fact
I think
fraud?
It's your audio that's tweaking out a little bit. I think that was, I think we've lost him for a bit. But hey, Graham, where we won't have to worry about fraud anymore is in elections. The League of Women Voters, you can check the Maine Wire today. League of Women Voters is going to have more people out of the polling places, making sure elections are secure.
Yeah, this one is very funny. There's a lot on elections that came out today that I think is all hilarious. The League of Women Voters, first of all, they've been in cahoots with Shanna Bellows for ages because they were campaigning, or they were at least congratulating Shanna Bellows when she won, and they've done a bunch of graphics and events together, and they were doing a work study on allowing non-citizens to vote, and then they opposed the SAVE Act because, in their words, the SAVE Act prevents non-citizens from voting, which I was like baffled when I actually saw that on their website, and we tweeted that out. But this new one, they're sitting there with
wait a second. Hey, hold on, Graham. Did we pounce when they put that on their website?
Yeah, I posted it. I think I quote tweeted. I might have quote tweeted that. No, I quote tweeted a different one actually.
So
I don't think he got what you were saying, Tom.
No.
Republican conservatives.
The Maine Wire
pounced.
Yeah,
the Maine Wire pounced,
exactly.
seized.
Yeah. That's right.
Well, I did pounce on that one quite literally, and I immediately saw that. And I was like, "That I cannot believe they posted that." But anyway, so they're sitting there with Shanna Bellows while she's talking about how great Maine's elections are. And they're not, but that's what she's talking about. And then they're like, yeah, to make sure we're doubling the amount of election observers. So which one is it? If the elections are so great and secure, why would you need to double the amount of election observers? But the video that Shanna Bellows says right before that, I think is way actually more inflammatory and insane, where she's basically like doing a Q&A from an audience, and an audience member asked her like something about a bill that would prevent ICE from going to the polls. And Shanna's like, well, actually, it's already illegal for ICE to go to the polls. But the big thing I'm worried about is the fear that ICE is having. Like, we're seeing people not go to the grocery store and not going to work.
Where?
And if they're not going to work, if they're afraid to go to work, they're going to be afraid to vote. And I was like, well, you just kind of gave the game away there, Shanna. Like, why would someone who's afraid of ICE not be afraid to vote, huh? I mean, like, pretty obvious. So, yeah, she really slipped up big time on that one. And we know from the recorded phone calls that Maine has a honor-based election system for determining if non-citizens can vote or not. And in that same clip, she's saying, I'd encourage everyone who is afraid of ICE to vote absentee. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah, that video.
Can you email me a ballot?
It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
That video's in our article, right, Matt? See if you can grab that video.
I just it's posted on all our social media from earlier today, Matt.
Did you, by the way, guys, find it astounding that the Democrats are saying that they don't want ICE at polling places?
Yeah,
is that freaking astounding or what? I saw that over the
weekend. And one other thing
we saw with the recent ICE surge was people, and I know many of you were involved in the mutual aid networks of support. We saw people afraid to go to work, afraid to go to school. Absenteeism in the greater Portland school districts was over 20%. We saw people afraid to go get groceries. And so my concern becomes, if you're afraid to go to work, you're going to be afraid to go to vote. And so then that's where our awesome absentee voting, protected by Maine Voices, Maine Votes, and constructed over years, we have 30 days of no excuse absentee voting. People can call their clerk and get their ballot. They can go online and request it and have it mailed to them. They can make arrangements to get their ballot in other ways, or they could go in person to the clerk's office early.
Yeah,
is that admitting we have illegals on the rolls or not? I mean,
right?
It's just a flat out admission that we have illegals on the voting rolls. Like, stop it.
Well, I mean, the Enquirer has gotten about 10 trillion views on their videos, showing them just calling up, asking these clerks, what do I need to do to vote? And it's amazing. Yeah, it's just the honor system. You don't have to go to your mailbox or anything like that. It's like it's so out in the open here that that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about like the inability of local politicians to be able to use their lying muscles anymore, because they don't seem to be practicing like covering up, being covert about things. Because what she just said should get her tossed. The fact that the voting honcho in the state said to all the clerks, don't answer questions because people might call and ask you who can vote. What? These people should be perp walk, frog marched right out of the buildings. Amazing.
Steve, will she challenge the SAVE Act if it gets passed? You think? I think she will.
I think she'll just probably ignore it. She'll come up with clever ways to prevent it from being enforced. I think that she's, to her credit, in front of a friendly audience, she's willing to speak the truth. I mean, it could not be clearer that Shenna Bellows wants illegal aliens voting. They've gone out of their way to register illegal aliens. They've given no-bid contracts to NGOs that go out and register illegal aliens to vote. She's been talking with the League of Women Voters for years at events. And, an item on the agenda is always non-citizen voting. So they're totally telegraphing what their plan is to win elections and to create and hold a permanent majority. And it's violating the Constitution with illegal alien votes. And I would say on the absentee ballot program, we've been poking around the absentee ballot request website. And now that we have some sophisticated technological tools that are basically available to everybody, because AI has changed quite a bit in the last year, there's some very real vulnerabilities in the technology that's being used to request absentee ballots. But just to keep it at a very simple level, I would ask, why doesn't the absentee ballot request website have a CAPTCHA, something to prevent bots from filing absentee ballot requests? I mean, how many times have you had to fill one of those out when you're just looking something up or using some random website? But for the sacred pillar of democracy, our elections, this perfect absentee ballot system, we can't have a CAPTCHA to prevent bots from voting. And also, why is it running on software that was barely current in 2010? So there are some really, really serious weaknesses with the absentee ballot request infrastructure, the online infrastructure that Secretary Bellows has to be aware of. I would assume that she is aware of these. And if she's not fixing them, the question is why? And maybe it's because she has friends and allies who exploit them.
Tom, Steve, the CAPTCHA is Jim Eagle. That's why we don't have the caption.
Hey, by the way, do we have any update on those 250 absentee ballots that were in an Amazon Prime package? Shenna's still deeply committed to those to pursuing that investigation to the end. Yeah, she won't rest. Has she rested yet?
6 months. She hasn't slept in 6 months.
Typically when there's an investigation like this, the person in charge from time to time gives updates. Anything from Aaron Fry, the Attorney General? I'm sure that Bangor Daily News and the Press Herald are nipping at his heels to get an update on this one.
His office is soundproof, so maybe he's talking and nobody.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing is those ballot envelopes that were just turned up randomly in Washington, D.C. Why is Secretary Bellows refusing to say what organization had them? What's that about? That doesn't sound like transparency. Doesn't sound like democracy. Doesn't sound like somebody who's committed to an investigation. Sounds like someone who is raiding our elections with illegal alien voters to accumulate power to themselves.
She remembered every detail about that absentee envelope ballot, other than the name of the firm it got sent to. She remembered how many got sent there, the name of the state, everything but the name of the firm that it got sent to, which seems like the number one obvious thing. But real quick, Tom, you were talking about what she would do with the SAVE Act. She is currently fundraising against the SAVE Act right now. She's sending out fundraisers talking about how bad the SAVE Act is. And let's be clear what it is. It would confirm that citizens are voting. So that is what she's fundraising against, is confirming that citizens are voting. And even if it was just voter ID, there's another clip we posted today where you won't believe what counts to get a driver's license in Maine for official recommendation.
This is gold.
You can get a court order for your deportation, and that document can be used in the BMV to get you a driver's license as proof of your illegal resident. You just cannot make that.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up.
Hey, so Graham, let me ask you something. Why do Maine Democrats, and these are voters, these are some of the people who stand over overpasses, will say no ice in town squares. Why do Maine voters want illegals to vote? Is it because they're poor, wretched lessers, or because Trump is mean to them, or because they want to just throw elections?
Well, at the Shenna Bellows level, it's because she wants to win. That's what it's about. For the average voter, I think they're convinced, they're buying into the narrative that our elections are safe and secure, and that any inquiry into it is a pro-Trump conspiracy theory to sow doubt and discord and throw chaos and put the results of the elections up in the air for confusion. And they're not really looking at the facts, or they're not being open-minded about just what the lengths that what Shenna Bellows is going to.
I would say that they if you asked those people about illegal aliens voting, they would say that's not happening. It's illegal. When we reported on Medicaid records for migrants, new Mainers, that showed that some migrants who were recorded as non-citizens in Medicaid records were also then registered to vote. The refrain from the Secretary of State and the Attorney General was that, will that be illegal? Well, yeah, it would be, but people break laws all the time. It's not like the cars on the interstate only ever go 65 miles an hour. But in this instance, you have a lot of money on the line for violating the law. There's a lot of money in who controls the government. There's a lot of money to be made in accumulating political power. So there's a lot of money that could be put toward harvesting ballots from illegal aliens. I think that the issue is not so much that illegal aliens themselves are, looking over the political landscape and evaluating the issues and then making a plan to go vote. I think the issue is NGOs harvesting votes in the names of illegal aliens. That's what the issue is. They're harvesting votes in the name of asylum seekers and then, voting for them. I think that yes. is more likely than just fighting for the suffrage for everybody who shows up here 3 months ago and gets an EBT card. That's not what the issue is. The issue is about creating the necessary human ingredient for a ballot harvesting scheme that operates through the absentee ballot program. And I just as a caveat, I want to say that. You still have to make them work for it. You shouldn't take the idea that Secretary Bellows is very obviously violating the Constitution and illegally trying to inject illegal alien votes into our elections. You shouldn't take that as an indication that you shouldn't vote at all. The answer to someone trying to illegally manipulate elections in an undemocratic way is more voting, because there's still it's still basically within the the mustard and the mayonnaise. They've got to come up with make them come up with a bigger illegal alien vote than they have in previous elections if they want to win. You've got to turn out hugely, yes. And you've got to volunteer to be a poll watcher. You've got to participate in the management of these elections. You've got to fulfill your duty prescribed in the Maine Constitution to provide oversight of elections. And everybody needs to vote. It's going to be too big to rig. If President Trump was able to win re-election in 2024, then the influence that they have over the elections is not insurmountable.
No. And we can't gloss over it, though, Steve, is that you see what the DMV did very quietly. Graham posted it to social medias today, but John Marin, who was the whistleblower on the translations for the driver's licenses, that was very quietly, oh, okay, you can't bring your own translator anymore. You only have to work with the state ones. That's another way that the state is admitting that there are problems with, illegals with voting, because you get a driver's license or you get signed up to vote and stuff like that. So the fact that the state has been very quiet on a Friday, news dumps that a little bit. Does that send off red flags to you, Steve? Because that's another story that
I don't even know if they news dumped it. I think they did no release on it whatsoever. Well, I think it was John Marin, the whistleblower, was following up with news organizations to confirm what had happened. And we had heard anecdotally from a lot of people that this was the case, but it had to be inferred and it kind of had to bubble up to news outlets, as opposed to having a press release go out like, hey, we flagged a problem. Here's the solution. Here's what we're doing now. That didn't happen. It was because Secretary Bellows didn't want people to know what was happening, but she also didn't want to appear to turn a blind eye to fraud that had already been aired in a legislative hearing. And by the way, all of these people who get their licenses through translation fraud are not demonstrating that they can safely operate a motor vehicle. So the results of that are what we saw last year, 2 people dead from illegal aliens driving vehicles. Now, we don't know that those individuals went and fraudulently got their licenses by hiring a translator to chief for them, but there seems to be an awful lot of smoke, when you're looking for this particular fire.
Yeah, I believe that lady in the hearing said 980 car accidents last year involving non-citizen drivers. So only 2 of the fatalities, but 980 is a lot of car accidents.
But I went, Steve sent me to that hearing. I had to sit through that, which, made my bald spot even bigger. Just the level of, elected Democrats going, well, this doesn't happen. You don't have any proof that this is happening. Well, what do you mean we don't have any proof? The whistleblower's right here. You want to talk to him? No, we don't want to talk to him. Like, what?
Yep.
They're just in denial of what's going on.
Well, it's a great segue into a thing before we go that the left always says out of this compassion thing is, you talk about crime or accidents with illegals. They'll say, well, native-born Americans commit more crime or do more just so you know that you're worse. You're a worse person than this person from Guatemala who snuck in and is gaming the system right now. And because they think of compassion as numero uno. So when we talked at the beginning of the show about the trans thing, this project of the left, which is where they centered their compassion to be the thing that they were going to do, even though it distorted reality and hurt people, that was their main project. That's how they manifested all of that compassion. Okay, so if that's fading away, multiple choice is this. What group is next to be the pet project of Democrat progressives? Is it the minor attracted people, the furries, or another group? Steve?
Oh, geez, that's a tough one. I think that the minor attracted persons becomes problematic because of the release of the Epstein files. I really would have gone with that one. Absent, they want to get some distance for that after they worked so hard to get the release of those files. They can't go headlong into the pedophilia advocacy. I don't know, maybe a return to climate change, but even then, all the progressive money wants data centers, so there's not going to really be funding for, the green movement to continue unless they can get it from China and Russia like they have in the past. I don't know, maybe they come up with something for, single childless female women. Maybe that can be turned into a victim group because that's their core constituency.
I disagree with you. And I don't think, I thought those were very good observations. Although I don't think that they like women. Do they? They don't seem to. They don't want to protect them. And you're allowed to be one and take one's place if you say it. So I don't know. John, the minor attracted people or the furries or somebody else?
I think it's going to be something else because 10 years ago, would we have predicted the situation that we're in right now? I mean, I certainly wouldn't have. I talk to school teachers a lot, and it's always off the record because they don't want anything reported or anything like that. But there's other things coming that we just don't see, and who would have thought 10 years ago that the most dangerous person in America would be a white, liberal, educated woman? None of us would have had that on our bingo card 10 years ago. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Graham, the furries, minor attracted people, or somebody else?
So what's going to happen is Shenna's going to find every Democrat voter that's died in the last 10 years, create like AI holograms of their personalities, and then allow those to vote.
That is not out of the realm of possibility. Because why would you disenfranchise somebody if you know what their intentions were at the time of their death? I would also say I'm going to go with furries. Actually, be the next one because it's not crazy to say that this kid is a blue raccoon when last year you were chopping off penises of kids. So like it's a really neutral move almost. All right, it has been a good hour. Thanks for all the comments. And he is Steve Robinson. Guys, go to the mainwire.com right now. Sign up for the Robinson Report. Stuff we've got up there. You've got to check out that video. It's just it's amazing. It's creepy as hell. Every moment that an elected Maine Democrat does not respond to it is a moment that they should be in absolute shame. John Featherston, our reporter, is hitting the streets tonight. He's right back at it. Graham, great work as usual. Matt, thank you behind the scenes. My name is Tom Shattuck. We will see you tomorrow.